How are the problems that we face in Claremont and in other areas in the Twin State Valley, other towns, how are they being dealt with or presently, like in areas where there's high crime, a lot of drugs, unemployment, people needing assistance and some kind of
Well, the fundamental reality about Claremont is that it is a poor town. The median household income in 2010 for the city of Claremont in Sullivan County is either at the bottom or next to the bottom. And then, of course, we are part of the Upper Valley Lake Sunapee Regional Planning Commission of 27 communities, which includes Hanover and Lebanon. And it is, again, next to the bottom or close to the bottom in median household income. So that's the reality. Claremont is a poor town. In addition, Claremont is an urban center surrounded by smaller towns, Unity, a little further away, Ackworth, and Charlestown, and none of these, well, maybe excepting, of course, Plainfield is more oriented toward Lebanon. Cornish has a higher
also
medium.
Windsor, they actually have more ties with Windsor in a way.
What I'm getting at is the less advantaged, the poor people, tend to want to go where the services are. And the services for underadvantaged people tend to be in Claremont.
Welcome to the Eye on the Twin State Valley. My name is Halford E. Jones, and with me today is Bernie Falter, and we're going to kick off 2016 with a discussion of events and things happening that will affect the Twin State Valley, both Vermont and New Hampshire sides. Tell me, Bernie, just offhand, what have you been doing lately since we last had a discussion?
Well, as usual, I pay attention to events and municipal and civic events in Claremont. And one of the things I do is regularly monitor the Claremont City Council. And I'm a regular observer, visitor, citizen at the Claremont City Council meetings.
That means that you have attended a recent meeting of the City Council, and you met the new mayor of Claremont, Charlene Lovett. What was your impression of her at the meeting and the other people that were on the council and the topics they discussed?
Well, actually, as of this telecast, there have been 3 meetings of the Claremont City Council. They had a special meeting at the beginning of January, and then there was the January regular meeting, and then just a few days ago, there was a workshop meeting. And Charlene was the presiding officer as mayor at those meetings, and she runs a very businesslike, crisp meeting. Also, this is a new council. There are 3 new people on the council. 6 got reelected, but 3 people are new to the council, although all 3 of them, Keith was reelected from the previous council. Bruce Temple, Alan Dameron, and the third one is escaping me now. But they're all experienced municipal people. So in a way, it's a new council, but they're all experienced people working in the public arena.
Well, actually, they haven't worked together except now.
That's right.
In other councils.
That's right.
So
yep.
Do you have high expectations they'll be able to do things for the city that previous councils perhaps have had difficulty in handling?
Yes, I think that's right. Charlene, for one, has a number of ideas for, as people always say, moving Claremont forward, and improving the governance and so on. And she's not the only one. Others, as they were campaigning, mentioned various ideas that they had. So there are quite a few agendas, not just hers, of people who want to see improvements and changes. And of course, the big news is that in December, Guy Sandegate, the city manager, and the council announced that this year would be City Manager Sandegate's last year. He would be, at the end of this year, taking retirement after being here for 12 or 13 years, maybe even 14.
Well,
and so this is
the previous record held by the last city manager.
Yes, well, I came back to Claremont in 2004, and I understand that there was, in the late 90s, I understand there was quite a bit of turnover in the city manager chair.
Yeah.
So yes, City Manager Sandegate has been there longer than many, at least in the recent history, you might say.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. So right now, Guy Sandegate is still managing the city. So do you think that the council will be able to, let's say, work with him fully in his last session? And do you know what his plans might be after he retires?
No, I haven't heard anything about that latter point you mentioned, or I haven't even heard any rumors of what he might be contemplating.
Well, I haven't had an opportunity to ask him, but because I've only seen him twice, and once a long time ago in front of the post office with another person, and I talked to him briefly, and then the last time I saw him when I heard that we just happened to meet, and I asked, and I said, I think we're in the shopping center there of Hannaford's Market. And I asked him, I said, "You're Mr. Sandegate?" And he said, "Yes." So we talked, and I told him that he was retiring, and I thought that some things in the city had improved, and I wished him a lot of luck, and everything. But I have heard rumor again that he might seek to come back as a resource person, or what's the word, consultant. But I don't know if that's true.
I hadn't heard that.
That may be just speculation. Anyway, moving on, is there any signs on the horizon as to whom or from where the next city manager is coming?
No. During the past couple of years of speculation that at some point City Manager Sandegate would be exiting, there has been scuttlebutt that who from internal might be opportune or qualified, or however you want to say it, and the name that comes up is usually Finance Director Mary Walter. Now she is acting city manager when he is periodically absent, as he was. So in a way, as a pinch hitter, she's been the one who's run the city when Guy has been out for a stretch of time when he had
That's
health
interesting,
difficulties.
because if no one has applied and no one is being sought, let's say, would the mayor, what's to prevent the mayor from assuming the duties temporarily of the city manager?
Well, that's
or with the council and
no, that's
mayor
assuming that they don't finalize someone during the year.
Well, I'm assuming they may not be able to get anybody.
Well, part of that is depending what the process that the council undertakes to select. I mean, they're the ones that are going to select the successor, but the process has not yet been defined. Now, I understand this was just when City Manager Sandegate was hired in 2001 or 2002, that there was a citizens committee that sort of screened applicants and then served up to the council, recommended to the council the most highly qualified of the pack, which was City Manager Sandegate. But I have not heard what the process will be. Some places will hire consultants to screen applications.
They hire an independent
Yeah,
group to
yeah, of course that
select.
would cost some taxpayer money to do that way. But others, I mean, like I said, Claremont, last time around, it was a citizens committee that got together. And personally, I hope that it is a citizens committee that's involved. But I haven't heard anyone on the council, and I haven't heard Mayor Lovett say anything about what her thoughts or what her recommendations are going to be for the council to have a choice process for. Now, I would think they'd get that started fairly soon, although this year, 2016, spans 2 fiscal years. In other words, the current fiscal year ends on June 30th, and then the new fiscal year starts on July 1st. We're in the 2016 fiscal year, and then in July starts the 2017 fiscal year, because we're on that schedule.
Yeah, that's something
But
that people don't
that-
understand is that difference, you know.
But
it's not
what that
the-
gets into is the budget process, because the budget time for fiscal year 17, starting July 1st, takes place in the spring. So the issue is, I mean, if they choose a city manager soon who participates in the budget process, but I don't think there's time to do that. What's more likely is that they will continue through the budget process, and then maybe in the June, July process, timeframe, start the selection of the city manager, who would then start presumably January 1st, 2017. But what that means is that whoever starts on January 1st, 2017 will have to administer essentially Guy Sandegate's budget, although it's not just his, the council has to approve the budget, and so on. So I guess that's the way I see it playing out, that instead of rushing to get someone who can jump in now and participate in forming the 2017 budget, I think they're going to say, let's cool it and get the budget done, and then we'll start the selection process. But I'm just speculating. I don't know.
Well, that makes sense, because I don't think a new candidate would enjoy coming right off the street or from where he's coming, right in the middle of something, and not have an understanding of what's going on, and then have to really knuckle down and do it. And
Now, unless the council has a secretly anointed preference in the background, but I don't think that's the case, because
well, if they haven't interviewed anybody and they don't know anybody,
Right.
And very seldom, in my experience anyway, that they select people from their midst or in the town or whatever it is. They prefer to have somebody coming from outside. But the problem with that is that many of them, although it hasn't been the case with the city manager in Claremont, they use that as a stepping stone to go to some other
Right,
thing. You see
right.
that with
Yeah,
fire
yeah,
chiefs, police
yeah,
chiefs,
yep.
and other officials. They come in,
Yep.
serve a term or enough time to get established, build up a resume, and then they're out the door.
Yep.
You know?
Yep. The other thing about, well, insider or outsider, I think fundamentally the chances are good that it's going to be somebody from outside, and that they'll go through some kind of a selection process, gathering resumes and so on, and interviews and the whole 9 yards. That's my sense of it. And that means that it will be an outsider who will come in with having come from a different place. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. That has an opportunity to give kind of a different perspective on things and maybe modernize some of the things. Now, City Manager Sandegate came from Massachusetts, although a lot of people complained about the cultural difference. And by that I mean Chelsea, where he came from, he was a kind of a right next to Boston, which is big city, and here we are in Claremont, fairly rural, and that some people said the way you do things in Chelsea, Mass, doesn't fit Claremont, although
Well, that's true of anybody coming from Connecticut or some place else. Even if they were in rural areas, they still have a different attitude and a different perspective, and they don't know anything about the history. And at least one thing, Sandegate tried to learn it, but some of his things that he's done in altering the identity of the city is probably one of the aspects that people dislike the most, because whenever you drastically alter something, and I don't want to get into all of that, but people that have been familiar with it and living there, they question, why is this happening? Why is this here? And so forth and so on. And the move to bring in large industries into Claremont it has a certain amount of success for a few instances, and then others it peters out. They cannot keep all of the businesses, but those that can work in Claremont, and still maintain their existence and make a profit and can sustain their work, they tend to stay. But you can probably name those almost on your one hand or maybe both hands by stretching it a bit.
I also take the point of view that there are two aspects to, well, most anything, but especially in public life, not only what's done, but how it's done. Okay. And I have a lot of respect for the substantive changes that City Manager Sandegate has accomplished, but I'm less enthralled with the way that he's done it, which has been a little, to my taste, and I'm not alone, a little too heavy-handed, a little bit too many elbows, a little bit too much Machiavellian politics, and I've said that publicly, so I don't have mind saying it publicly again. And so it's important that the method is, well, I hope, let me put it this way.
It also means the results too, because some people were not happy with some of the results, like at the reservoir and at the Moody Park. And
well, not only that, but I think there were some results that couldn't be achieved with that particular approach. I mean, he's known not to be a great communicator, and that means the absence of communication of what municipal strategies are, his strategies, doesn't engage people to get involved, participate. It sometimes comes across like it's coming down from on high. And as many people know, there's been a sense that the council has been too passive in their oversight and their supervision.
Well, that's putting it mildly, because I've heard that they're very timid in his presence.
And that is one of the things that's changing. As a matter of fact, the last council of 2014-2015 had started to test the boundaries a little more, to take back the supervision, oversight, and strategy and policy formation that had kind of gone more into the city manager's office. So, and I think that's going to continue. I think that's one of the things with let me call it the new regime, the current council for 2016 and 2017, I think that's one of the changes, and it's already been apparent in the 3 meetings that have been there. The council is starting to take more initiative, take more strategy, take more policy, although as a New Hampshire city, there is a line between the authority of the city manager as the chief executive and the city council, which is essentially the policy body, and that's enshrined in state law, and that's periodically come up, like, you know, you're going on my turf and I'm going on your turf, and that's still being worked out in even the few meetings that the new council has had.
Yeah, I'm sure it will be. But again, how are the problems that we face in Claremont and in other areas in the Twin State Valley, other towns, how are they being dealt with or presently, like in areas where there's high crime, a lot of drugs, unemployment, people needing assistance and some kind of
Well, the fundamental reality about Claremont is that it is a poor town. The median household income in 2010 for the city of Claremont in Sullivan County is either at the bottom or next to the bottom. And then, of course, we are part of the Upper Valley Lake Sunapee Regional Planning Commission of 27 communities, which includes Hanover and Lebanon. And it is, again, next to the bottom or close to the bottom in median household income. So that's the reality. Claremont is a poor town. In addition, Claremont is an urban center surrounded by smaller towns, Unity, a little further away, Ackworth, and
Charlestown.
Yep, Charlestown, and none of these, well, maybe excepting, of course, Plainfield is more oriented toward Lebanon. Cornish has a higher
also
medium.
Windsor, they actually have more ties with Windsor in a way.
What I'm getting at is the less advantaged, the poor people, tend to want to go where the services are. And the services for underadvantaged people tend to be in Claremont. Now, as far as Claremont economic development is concerned, a real coup that City Manager Sandegate arranged was Red River Computer Company relocating from Lebanon to Claremont. On the other hand, in other respects, some of his initiatives didn't pan out, and I'm thinking of a water bottling company was going to be moving from, I think it was Randolph to Claremont, and they even built a building. Of course, that was just before the Great Recession, and the bottom fell out of the bottled water market.
Yeah.
So
Well, that's what I tried to tell
that
my friend.
company and the jobs it would have brought evaporated, pardon the pun.
Well, that's what I tried to tell my friend at the senior center, because he thought the bottling company was going to be across in that area where the giant store on Maple Avenue used to be, and they're building a church there.
Yeah.
The land, but I understood that they did have a factory, and I think it's out on Grissom Lane or Industrial
Well, yeah,
Park,
they built the building,
Yeah.
which was recently sold to, can't remember who it was sold to, but the water company never came. But the other thing, though, the city, at the request of the administration, raised the water rates while the company was considering. No, actually, after they had said they were going to be relocating, the water rates were raised because, and that was, in my opinion, kind of a greedy move. And I think it was primarily the Great Recession why the company didn't end up coming, but it was not smart to raise the water rates and kill the potential golden goose.
Well, the other concern is that we get water from the Sugar River for various use, and that's being pumped. And the reservoirs have their limitations in Claremont. You know, we had that time when they were shut down, you couldn't use the water, and then we have to have other pumping stations up on Bible Hill
Right, yeah.
and everything. So if you have a bottling company paying for the use of the water, and you have a water shortage, you have a drought or whatever, which can happen, or you have some other factor, like look what Flint, Michigan did with their pulling in the water from the river into the city system and corroded the pipes. And you know, I'm not saying at Claremont that would happen, but it would have happened if the river laws had not changed on dumping waste in the Sugar River, because that was once a very, people would say, never eat the fish you catch out of the river. You know, I forget what they were catching.
Well, that's been a problem, I mean, not just locally. And I think the Connecticut River is relatively recently has been rehabilitated to the point where...
Well, see, it was a way of getting rid of things, and it was a way of bringing materials down, like logs in the river.
And maybe when the population density was lower, there were fewer people, it wasn't such an issue because the water could dilute whatever undesirable elements ended up. But then as the population increased, there's more bad stuff that people are generating going to...
It also means the use of substances that you didn't have before, excessive
well, that's true. There is that.
A lot of pesticides, a lot of fertilizers, and other things.
New chemicals for more advanced processes that had
and you
toxicity.
had no way to deal with garbage and other things, so people would throw things into the river.
So progress has its costs too.
Well, anyway, let's just touch on the election quickly. What's your assessment of the debates that have been going on for the Republican nominees?
I haven't watched all of them. I've watched a few of them and segments of them. What I prefer to do is watch clips from CNN or the Wall Street Journal or the New York Times or the Washington Post. They will take the most significant moments, and they don't all agree on what they are, and do anywhere from a 30-second clip to a 2-minute clip with the lead up to the moments, especially when there's sparring going on. And so I've tried to watch the highlights. And overall, I mean, it's a winnowing process. And I don't have a problem with anybody who wants to be president jumping in and playing in the pool. So I think it's a very naturalistic process, and the survivor will be the Republican candidate. I do think that on the Democratic side, there was, at least initially, a perception that Queen Hillary was the anointed royal, and I have a problem with that approach, but my sense, even in New Hampshire Democratic politics, I'm fairly conservative Republican.
Well, they also had a third candidate.
But in New Hampshire, the Democratic machine very carefully controls candidacy, especially for the legislature. There's almost no opposition for House seats on the Democratic side every 2 years in New Hampshire, because the Democratic machine in New Hampshire doesn't want Democrats banging each other in a primary. They want to save their energies for banging Republicans in the real election. On the other hand, on the Republican side, you want to be a House rep? Sign up. And so there are more primaries on the Republican side. And I think fundamentally that the Democratic machine, with a capital D, in New Hampshire is anti-democratic with a small d. So I have a real problem with the way capital D Democratic, and I'm on the other side of the fence. But Well, if you're hungry for power, let's see, what is it? What is it in politics? Power, money, glory, and sex.
Yeah. And then eventually the Undertaker comes in and claims them all.
I forgot about that one.
Well, thank you very much for your observations and our discussion today, Bernie. And
Okay,
we'll
it's
meet
been a
again
pleasure as
next
usual.
time, and maybe we'll invite some others to come in.
Sounds
We'll have
good. Yeah, yeah.
We'll have a round table instead of the square one. Okay.